I think in this society, I can really only speak for the US because that is where I am from and where I live and where all of my experiences have really been. But we tend to confuse attachment with love. And you can be in connection with people and feel attached to them while also loving them. But they are two very different things. And I know for myself, just being a human in the society, watching movies, social media, the adults around me, I don't feel like I have the best role models that represented pure, true love. I feel like I did see a lot of love demonstrated, and I also feel like I saw a lot of attachment demonstrated. And I really didn't know how to differentiate the two until I got sick of my dysfunctional relationships, went on a self-love journey, and then ended up finding somebody that really provoked pure love within me. And then once that happened and I got a taste of what pure love feels like, I was able to recognize it in all of my relationships, even the ones that were super heavily attachment based. I was able to forgive myself, I was able to forgive the others, and that forgiveness and acceptance in and of itself will help you to access pure, true love. Hey, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Obviously from the title, this is all about true love versus attachment, because like I said, when we don't have the best examples of pure love, true love being reflected to us on an everyday basis in every situation, we tend to veer towards attachment. And that makes sense because we live in a society where people often really emphasize the mind and fear and trying to survive versus the heart and love and kindness and just being of service to humanity over all other things. So it makes sense. And attachment has been extremely normalized to the point where we just assume that love is attachment when they're two different things. They can exist in the same connections and relationships, but we also can heal our insecure attachments and become more loving towards ourselves and everyone else. So I wanted to start by kind of explaining, I wrote some notes on my iPad, the difference between attachment and love. And I want to start with attachment. I'll also give you guys some examples from my life because I would say all of my relationships have really reflected insecure attachment styles and dysfunction. I feel like through my friendships, you can also have obviously attachments and love in friendships, but I feel like my friendships have reflected more love capacity than attachment. I still have experienced and still experience attachments in friendships, of course. We're gonna experience both. And it makes sense that we experience negative attachment because just being a human in and of itself will come with an ego or a self-concept, and there will be negative parts in our egos and self-concepts that we will have to heal. And as we heal them, then we can turn our insecure attachments into a more secure attachment, which would lead us to creating more pure love through that. But since most of us are functioning from insecure attachment styles, the dysfunctions from that will make the love that we feel for the people, places, and things that we're attached to more tainted, less pure, less true because of the layers of fear that we are attaching onto that love. And in that case, the deeper you love with an insecure attachment, the more fear you're gonna feel in those connections. And that's why we need to understand the difference between the attachment and the love. So when you have an insecure attachment to something, it's because whatever you're attached to is fleeting. So everything in this world besides love itself, consciousness itself, you know, God's source, is fleeting and forever changing. So if we attach ourselves to these external things, we are going to feel fear because it's fleeting. And we know eventually we're going to lose it. Eventually there's going to be a loss. So that attachment that we have is always going to be insecure when we're attached to the thing above the love. And say that's the case in a connection or a relationship, we always know deep down that person is either going to leave us because the relationship doesn't work out, which is okay, or they're going to leave us when they die because nobody lives forever. And that is also okay. That's just a part of life. It's inevitable. Everyone that we love is going to leave us eventually. So the sooner we're able to accept that as a fact, the sooner we're able to accept that attachment will always be there, but we don't necessarily have to act from that insecure place of fear. So when there's a mutual attachment in a connection, it might look like a push and pull, a grab or a push away. It can be manifested as my needs versus your needs, or a victim versus a bad guy. It's the duality, but it's the duality in fear, because duality in and of itself doesn't necessarily have to be negative. But when you're looking at duality from that fear place, it's gonna come off as negative. It's illusion. It only feels real because we make it so. If you feel scared in your connection, if you feel a lack mindset of I need more, there's never enough, if you feel constricted, like you can't be your full authentic self, that is an insecure attachment. It's felt in the mind, and it can look like ruminating thoughts that are coming from a negative place, a fear place. It comes with strings attached. It's you do this for me, I do this for you. If you don't do this for me, I won't do this for you. It can be withholding. It's strategic, and the giving and taking of it is transactional. So those are some of the ways that a dysfunctional, insecure attachment can manifest. And throughout all of my long-term romantic relationships, I've gotten to play out almost all sides of that. Where in my first relationship, it was more like I was the bad guy and my ex was the victim. In my second relationship, it was more like I was the victim and he was the bad guy. But it was always two sides of the same coin. We were just functioning from the insecure attachment coin. It doesn't mean that there wasn't love underneath that. There's always love underneath. Love is the only real thing in existence. Love is God, God is love. And at the same time, when we put these layers and layers of fears on top of the love, it's really hard to feel it. And so when you love something so much and you are only focused or predominantly focused on the loss of it, the fear in it, it's going to end up making the connection probably the most toxic, the most unhealthy connection that you can have. And we tend to see that in like parent-child dynamics. We tend to see that in family dynamics. We tend to see that in romantic relationships, really close friendships. The fear and the pain will play out in extreme ways if we don't heal them from within. And when we finally are able to heal them within, then we can start accessing the love. And sometimes in those situations, the most loving thing we can do is to part ways. And I'd say that in my second long-term relationship, that really was the most loving thing I could do, was finally be like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to let you live your life. I'm gonna live my life. I also think that was the most loving thing I could do in my first relationship as well, in both of them. And so now, because I've done all this healing, I've worked through so many things. Not that I've healed everything. I know I haven't. I'm a human. I'm always going to be having new challenges that I have to overcome. That's just a part of life. But from the place that I'm standing right now, I can look back and be like, I learned from that. I see the patterns. I see that what I thought was me being loving was actually me just being manipulative or trying to get my needs met or being caring in a way that truly wasn't caring because it wasn't benefiting both people. And so when I finally decided to take that time for myself and dissolve those attachments, I realized within myself there were all these unhealed hearts that needed love, needed forgiveness, needed acceptance. Because once we're able to accept who we really are within, then we can start to accept love from other people. And so in one of my relationships, I had a really hard time accepting that my feelings mattered and that my needs mattered, and that if they're not being met, I am allowing myself to be a doormat to this person. When I left that relationship, this was the second one, I thought that loving somebody meant that I would be a doormat because I felt like I gave him all my love, and what happened in return, I felt stepped on. But that wasn't me giving all my love to the relationship. That wasn't me living from love. That was me living from people pleasing and placating and trying to get my needs met in backdoor ways. That wasn't me genuinely loving myself and loving him, because if I was genuinely in my authenticity, being who I truly am and loving him, then if we were truly compatible, all my needs would have been met and all of his would have been met, and it wouldn't have been such a fight. And I wouldn't have ended up becoming a doormat if I was truly loving in wholeness and fullness and completeness. I would have never ended up being a doormat. I would have left at the first sign that, you know, this doesn't work. And I would have been a peaceful leave of, I want the best for you, I want the best for me, and I think the best thing for both of us would be for me to go somewhere else and to let you be in your full authenticity and decide for yourself what is best for you, while I go love myself and find love where it is best for me. And then in my first relationship, where I feel like I was more of the bad guy per se and he was more of the victim. When I say that, it's really like in quotes, because we're both doing this to ourselves and each other. At least in my experience, that's how I felt. But the most loving thing I could do for him was to be, and this is what I ended up doing, but it took me years in both situations. It took me 4 years in the first relationship and 3 years in the second, but in the second one, the most loving thing I could have done was to be like, hey, I feel like my behavior and my treatment of you is not what you need. I don't feel like we're compatible, and I think that you deserve love in wholeness and fullness, and I can't give that to you. I eventually got there. I definitely did not say it in those words, and it was never that kind. But years later, I was able to realize that now, as I am this version of me, going through all the things I've went through, all the people I've dated since, and through all of the time I spent just with myself, I was able to get to that point of realization that for a relationship, a friendship, any type of dynamic or connection to truly be beneficial to both parties, or however many parties are involved, you have to be operating from your heart space of highest truth, and you have to be operating in pure love. You have to be able to recognize when the fear comes up, because there will always be fear that comes up, and you have to be able to work through it and not act from the fear, because if you are acting from the fear, you are creating more dysfunction. And I finally had a connection that's kind of been on and off for the past year and a half, where I was able to realize that this was a heart connection. This was a truly aligned, compatible connection. And it was interesting because whenever the fear would actually come up, it would lead us to separation. And then I would have to grow, and so would he. And then when we would come back together, we were more authentically ourselves, more loving, more connected, and more grown. And then something would come up again, and then we'd have to separate again. The first time I would say was probably his thing, but it's, you know, it's two people involved, obviously. And then the second time we had to separate, that was more me trying to cling to some type of attachment that would help me feel less scared, which doesn't work. If you are acting out of fear, you get more fear. And so we had to take that space again. We finally reconnected over the weekend. I've been having this calling to reach out to him, and I've been avoiding it because my ego did not want to go there, because my ego knew, my self-concept was like, we're gonna have to grow, Julia, and you've grown so much that your heart is calling this person, but if you call this person into your life again, you're gonna have to grow again, because they are growing, you are growing, and for you guys to stay in connection, you have to be fully authentically yourself. And so because I knew that, I kept running from it, the thought of reaching out, because I knew I had to apologize. I didn't want to admit, hey, you know what, I was wrong. I was acting from fear with you. I wasn't being in pure love. And he's the type of person that won't take my BS. Just as much as I'm the type of person now that won't take BS from anyone, especially a romantic partner, so therefore why would I take it from him? So we both were coming from the highest truth whenever we would connect. And I've never felt more love within a romantic connection than I have with him, but I also never felt more challenged to have to grow than with him. And so I want to give you guys some examples of what love feels like. This goes for romantic connections, platonic connections, connections of animals, connections of the earth, connection to anything. This is the essence of pure love. It's forever and it's unconditional. So no matter how much time we took apart, our connection never died, it never lessened. In fact, every time we grew within ourselves and then reconnected, our connection grew deeper, even in separation. When it's mutual, it feels like teamwork, alignment, synergy. It feels like you found your matching puzzle pieces next to you. It feels like you found your community, your team, your peanut butter to your jelly. Like it just goes together and all parts are whole and complete on their own, and yet they're better together. That's what love feels like. It's caring for all parts of the whole. It's taking others as a part of yourself. So when you do something loving for yourself in that connection, it is loving to the other. And when the other does something loving for themselves, it is loving to you. And when you do something loving for them, it is loving to you. And when they do something loving for you, it is loving to them. It's bold, it's brave, it's fearless. It will overcome fear. It's felt in the heart and drives you without logic or reason. If you ever notice yourself in your head and you're thinking all these things about somebody that you really deeply care about, and you don't want to be thinking bad things about them, stop yourself by breathing deeply into your body. When you breathe deeply into your body, you can't be in your head anymore because you're in your body. And then as you breathe deeper and you focus on your breath, then drop your attention to your heart and ask for a message. listen to it, see what comes up for you. And in my opinion, that is the quickest way to transmute that negative rumination, that fear energy. Anytime I start to feel my insecure attachments come up, I have to remind myself to do that. And then when I do that, I'm reminded of all of the loving parts of me. Love is free, it is honest, versus an attachment is strategic. If you need to get your needs met, you might lie. That's coming from a survival place, whereas love is thriving. It's honest. It doesn't need to lie. It's accepting of who you authentically are. Why would you ever have to lie? If you accept who you authentically are, other people around you are going to accept you too. You're going to attract the right people who accept you and who you accept. It's giving and receiving in harmony. There's no strings attached. When you give through love, the act of giving is enough in and of itself for you. When you receive from love, the act of receiving is enough for you and the other person. They feel good giving you whatever they're giving you. That's why sometimes it's easier for us to love our animals over people, because people are just so complicated and nuanced, and there's all these things and fears that we come with, and then we look at a cute little cat and we're like, you're perfect. Or even like a baby. You look at a baby, baby's done nothing but just exist and be cute, and you're like, you're perfect. But the true test is to be able to overcome all of those things within yourself and be able to love within your heart and radiate it out everywhere you go. And so in my experience, the more I accept myself and the parts about me that I find hard to love, it makes it easier for me to be loving towards others. Being loving is a vulnerable thing. It does expose you to pain and hurt, but on the flip side, if you stay in fear, you're always going to be experiencing pain and hurt, because that is fear's natural state, is to be constricted and confined and scared and avoiding. Versus when you're open-hearted and you're loving, you're in that joy, you're in that bliss, you're in that everything is great type of energy. And yeah, sometimes you will get hit with a pain point or a trigger or a hurt moment, but if you stay in your heart in the loving energy and you allow it to go through you and you accept it, you're able to return back to love a lot faster, as opposed to staying in that pain and building more fears around potentially getting hurt again, so you avoid loving. If you avoid loving, you avoid living. If you stay in fear, you don't get to experience life in its fullness and wholeness. So that's why I've been making so many videos about getting into our heart space and facing our fears, because when we do that, we change ourselves. And when we change ourselves, we change our worlds. And when we change our worlds, our entire circumstances and experiences become different and better, and they grow and we grow, and when we grow, the universe gets to expand through us. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.